to DT Fae Podcast. I'm Kate.
I'm Elle, and this week we'll be discussing House of Flame and Shadow, chapters 61 to 66.
In classic SJM style, it's going to really start popping off in the last like 1/3 of the book. But before we get into it, and before we get into your book rec, which you were talking about earlier, and involves an incubus and a succubus.
We'll get into that.
Okay, we'll get into it. But E! News posted a dream ACOTAR casting that I thought was really interesting. They had Thomas Doherty as Rhys, and it works for me. We watched him in The Invitation, and that movie wasn't great, but I do think he was good in that like morally gray, or I don't know if he was actually, he might have just been straight up villain, but
he's very pretty. He was good at being kind of smarmy.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those you're like, ugh, something feels a little off about this guy.
We also could not relate to that movie because she was so upset that a rich, handsome vampire wanted to marry her and give her eternal youth.
What is wrong with this girl?
And then they had, I'm going to butcher all of these names, but Alicia Debum Carey, I guess, they had her as Feyre, and I didn't recognize the name, but I looked up her IMDb, and she's been in a lot of stuff. Like she was in The 100, which I started and never finished, and then she was in Fear the Walking Dead. And I'm kind of like indifferent. Like I don't hate it, but I don't love it for Feyre.
I mean, she has, she can do a good what is it, RBI?
Yeah.
If she, don't want to just say it, if she needs to. So like if she has to be kind of cold in the beginning and aloof or whatever, I could see her pulling that off.
And then, well, same with their Nesta. They had Jessica Alexander. And again, I'm not like super familiar with her, but
I just messed those two up. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. The Nesta actress has the
I was
RBI.
visualizing Nesta actress. I apologize. But I could see the other girl as Farrah too.
Yeah.
She has like the big eyes that could like really draw you in.
Yeah. And then, like you said, Jessica Alexander is Nesta. She, in the video that they chose in their reel, I was like, okay, I can see this being Nesta. Yeah. And then they had more as Claire Holt, who we actually talked about. She's like a fan of the books, and I do want people who love the books to be involved. So I think that she would actually be a pretty good Moore.
Yeah, and it's hard to think of Claire Holt without seeing her as her character from the originals and Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
She's Rebecca. But, in the beginning, Rebecca really wants everybody to love her. So she's kind of bubbly and she's trying, and Moore kind of gives off like a bubbly, like unaffected.
Yeah.
I guess, I could see that.
I could see it.
I'd be very interested to see it. How
Some
she could do it.
people were talking about her age because she's, a 35-year-old woman, but Moore is what? I mean, I know she's supposed to look younger, but she's like in her 500s. I don't think it's too crazy to have someone who's 35 playing her. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, so I tried to figure out how old Moore is, because this is how I like spiral into things. And I was like, okay, she's around the same age as Rhys, so she's in her 500s. And they tried to force her to marry Eris when she was like 16 or 17. But if you're using Rhys's age and Baron's age, and when Baron was married to Eris's mother, according to Helion, that means Eris was like 10 when all that went down, like when the forced marriage and everything. So I don't know if it changes your perspective of either SJM is just kind of like, I don't know, not keeping up with timelines, or that is what was going on. Like the Eris was like 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much underlying pressure from families. None of it is great. And some of the horrible things that happened to Moore are because of her own family, not Eris.
Yeah.
But
I think we're going to learn more. I think we're going to learn more about Eris, about more of that situation. And I think he's going to be, I've always kind of seen him as sympathetic anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I'm hoping the next book has a lot more of Eris. And that was a tangent, but the one that I hated the most in the ACOTAR casting was they had Austin Butler as Tamlin, and I don't even think he's gotten rid of his Elvis accent yet. So just imagine like Austin Butler as Elvis as Tamlin.
I don't know how to describe Tamlin. I see him differently.
I do too.
Yeah, honestly, I see him more like one of the Viking actors.
Yeah, like a Skarsgård.
Yeah. Well, as long as they're like beefed up, like long blonde hair, a little bit like He-Man. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just a little bit different.
No, I picture that too. And you're never going to guess who they have as Amarantha, Megan Fox. And I'm taking credit for that because it was so close after we talked about how she would be so good as Amarantha.
Yeah. I still see her more as Maeve, but I could definitely
Yeah.
still see her as like a quote bad guy character.
Well, overall, I didn't hate it. And I do love when, mainstream.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. Well, I love mainstream media even talking about ACOTAR, and it gives you hope that whatever is happening, Hulu or movies or whatever, like that it'll eventually happen, because I still don't know like where that project stands.
That's one of those things, like, even when they made Harry Potter into movies, and I love Harry Potter, I want to see it, but I'm just so anxious for whatever changes they may make, or like, when you have a character in your mind and how you visualize it and they do something totally different, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I would be very excited to see whatever is coming, but it'll give me anxiety. I have to prepare.
Well, I don't know if this fandom is gonna totally be happy with anything or anyone. Like, it's kind of like 50 Shades. Like, I feel sorry for anyone who is cast, especially as like Feyre and Rhys.
Yeah.
We all have very strong opinions.
Well, we've already read the books, so we all kind of have something different in our mind's eye. It does make it very difficult, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I just thought it was interesting. But before we get into House of Flame and Shadow, you have a book rec.
I do. So my book rec this week is the Vampires Mage series, and it's by Crawford, who we have recommended before. It was the Demon Queen Trials, the City of Thorns.
I love that series.
So like Crawford, they're actually, I think it's two people. C and N are two different people that write as Crawford.
That's so interesting. That's like Zodiac Academies like that too.
Yeah, I think it's a guy and a girl that write it together. But they always make these very interesting worlds, and there's a lot going on, and usually there's some spice. This series has a lot going on. Like, there is so much. There's 4 books. I actually haven't finished the 3rd because I've been very busy, and there's honestly just so much happening that there's not like a good stopping point either.
Yeah.
So this particular series is set in present day Boston, but it's in a world that knows of demons, vampires, and mages. This is one of those things, I think they discuss what happened in the book, but like, she's kind of like on the run for her life, like the whole series. So I'm trying to remember what specifically happened that like it became like world news. Like, everybody knew they existed. They have different realms. Like, the vampires live in a different realm. The mages are in a different realm.
I mean, that's very much like Demon Trials or whatever.
Yeah. And then, well, like, I guess initially they weren't all in their own realm, but like once humans caught on to them, you had like the witch trials and they were like hunted down. And then she kind of uses demon interchangeably with vampire and mage. So I'm not sure if they're actual demons or if like demons are a separate issue. There's a lot to this like world building.
Is it set in the same world? Because that's, even it being outside of Boston, is very
she's still in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Nothing is impossible. It could be. It hasn't overlapped yet.
Okay.
But they didn't mention the other book series. This series has a group called the Brotherhood, which is basically like hunters that hunt down demons to try to protect humans. And because of a few massacres that have happened recently, the Brotherhood is really gaining favor. And it's one of those that like, we're here to protect humans. We're not trying to kill anybody, but if we have to sacrifice one person to save many, we will. Doesn't sound awful. Of course, once you get into it, they're like, yeah, we don't care. We're going to kill everybody. Yeah. So like our main character, her name is Rosalind. She is a college student, and I don't remember exactly which college. They reference Thorndike, but I don't think there is a Thorndike University. There's a Boston U. So either way, she's a college student who also is working and training with the Brotherhood. And so she's working to be basically a demon hunter. But
is she human?
In the beginning, she thinks she is.
Okay.
Naturally.
She's not like other girls, though.
There's always something. But so she's been training to kill demons, which, in general, a lot of the demons are bad. And the ones that she's killing, like the first big scene that we come into, she's hunting down a red cap, which is literally a guy that wants to eat your entrails. And it's like he's been referenced in other series, but like he takes his hat off and dips it in your
Yes,
blood.
we've talked about that.
Yeah, it was
That's
in
like the gnomes.
the Demon Days Vampire Night series.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy's like normal height.
Oh, okay.
So he's extra creepy because he's
Yeah,
hunting
that's
down
scarier.
some of the frat parties that night.
Ooh.
I know, it's wild.
I don't know. Maybe take out some of the frats. Whatever.
I mean, do what you gotta do. I'm just kidding. But so she's hunting him down, and she's had issues more recently with killing some of the demons because something happens that they seem too human, and she's having empathy, which is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so this night she's like, I'm really determined to kill him. And then this mage pops up out of nowhere. To be fair, the red cap gets the better of her and she may die. So this guy pops up and saves her,
Okay.
which she's pissed about because she's still supposed to do it herself.
Yeah.
And then, so first of all, she's also supposed to hate mages. She's been told all these horrible things. And he's like, girl, you better run. They're after you next. And she was like, what? These are my people. And so it kind of becomes a tailspin.
Mm-hmm.
Within like 24 hours, suddenly she's on the run from her own people because they think that she has magic. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm not a mage. And they also have this idea that mages look kind of like a hag. Like if you are willing to accept the magic in your body, you become deformed and like dark.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not true.
Yeah.
But so she's like, you guys are nuts. No, that's not true. And so they're hunting her down. She has to turn to this mage. Obviously hate it for help and protection.
Of course, I'm assuming he's sexy.
Well, we later learn he's also half incubus.
Okay.
So
wait,
that's where that came in.
What is the difference between incubus and succubus? I mean, I know
one's male, one's female.
Oh, okay. I always thought succubus was like the really sexual one.
They're both sexual. Okay. Succubus is the female.
Okay.
In this series, the succubus are actually a lot more violent than the incubus. So they've been hunted down and they've been trying to like eradicate them in general, succubus and incubus. But so she ends up kind of tail spinning because as he's trying to help protect her, she learns a whole lot about this world that she thought she knew and how far off base she is. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the book keeps going. There's so many things. I don't know how to like give you guys more information that wouldn't be spoilers because like he takes her into one of the famous graveyards in the city and there's actually like a hidden like protective area for mages. Okay. And then he leaves her again without giving her any answers. And she's like, what the heck, dude? I have questions. So she follows him and she ends up following him through a portal to the vampire world. Like it takes a very dramatic turn. Uh-huh. And then of course, then he has to rescue her there because the vampires are like, are you human? What are you doing here? Mm-hmm. It becomes, it's so much. But of course, if he gets injured, he needs a human female to help him heal. So the spice, but there's a connection between them that nobody wants to admit to. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun to read and you're just very tense. There's sexual tension.
But is there actual sex?
Yes.
Okay.
It does take a little while to happen.
I know you had to search some keywords.
I just had to make sure it was coming. I'm not sitting around for all of this with nothing. Okay. Let's be real.
Right.
But yeah, I actually haven't finished yet and I'm very excited to see where it goes because there's so much. She ends up like having a second soul in her body that is a very powerful mage. Okay. And her parents did it to her.
Is that where the magic is coming from? Like she's not actually magic.
I don't know if she actually has magic. Like she's born in the mage realm, which she had no idea because she was adopted when she was like 5. Mm-hmm. All these things. But she's been wearing a ring her whole life made of iron that she was told is like to represent the deity that the Brotherhood worships, but it actually also suppresses the magic from this other soul.
Okay.
So I was telling Kate before we started filming that the part that I'm at, her other soul has love for another man. So she's torn between multiple men and it's awful.
That's such a gray area though, of like, you can't use my body to hook up with people.
That's not okay. But at the same time, like she ends up making out with the first mage's brother and he's so mad. She's like, it wasn't me. It was
I guess if you get caught cheating, you can always be like, it was the mage.
I don't know what happened here. Yeah. So it's really good.
Yeah,
it's a fun read.
I am almost done with A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel Jensen. And I have not been this excited about a series since like, I guess 4th Wing or before that ACOTAR. Like it is such a strong start to a series and it is all the Norse mythology and it's just, it's such an easy world. Like it's a complex world, but you already are familiar with so much of like the Norse mythology and all of that. The gods, like Thor and Odin, and it's really easy. It feels familiar, even though it's a new world. And it's at like 70% until you get real spice, and I still enjoy it. But I just got to a scene, and it's in a tent, and it reminded me of Rhys and Feyre
Ugh.
in the inn, which is one of my favorite. I love that scene.
Oh, so it's like the end. I thought you were going to reference when they were in battle and hooking up. But
No,
like,
not that
okay.
tent. They're in a tent. So Bjorn and Freya. God, I'm gonna get so
Have to
confused. Freya
share
and
a
Feyre.
tent.
And yeah, they have to share a tent, but it reminded me of Rhys and Feyre when they have to share the bed at the inn.
It's one of our favorite tropes.
It is, but also it was just like steamy and the longing, and I really liked it because I was scared when I started it because she's the Bridge Kingdom author, and
Oh,
that series had like no spice,
yeah.
and it was good, but it was just a little more YA leaning. But
Yeah.
yeah, that'll probably be my recommendation next week when I finish it. But
Is it just one book or is it like
it's
a
one
series?
book. So it just came out this year, the first book, and it's Saga of the Unfated, because
Oh, so there could be more.
I'm gonna end up saying my whole recommendation, but a lot of people have, or not a lot of people, some people have a drop of God's blood. So you have like a drop of Odin's blood, or you have a drop of Thor's blood, and so you can have a little bit of that god's abilities, like
Oh.
lightning, or you can tell when someone's lying, or she is a shield maiden, and so she can be like, protect me, and her shield lights up, and it lights up the whole shield wall.
Oh.
So
Wow.
yeah, I really, really, really like it.
So it's also, that's interesting because it's different magic. It's not just like I can control nature.
Right.
I control fire. Like
Exactly.
everybody's different.
And the gods are kind of like involved, like they're a little meddling.
Oh.
And yeah, and I think something else is going on with her because she has like a minor god's blood, but all the gods are involved like in her fate.
Yeah.
So I think she might actually have like at least two.
Yeah, why
God's
would they
blood
care
in
if she
her.
wasn't something more?
But it's really, really good. So
Okay.
I'll talk about it next week.
Yeah,
I
you
just
have to
talked
tell us
about
more
it.
next week.
We ended the last episode with the revelation from the Princes of Hell that Bryce is capable of opening the door between worlds via the Northern Rift.
Which is good? Question mark.
It means she can let the armies of Hell into Midgard to join the fight against the Asteri, but we all remember what happened last time, that Hell had access to Midgard via the gates in the spring.
People don't forget.
People don't forget. I mean, they came out and started killing people, eating people, ripping people apart, and I don't know. Bryce doesn't seem as hesitant as I think I would be to open those doors
Well,
again.
they really sold her on. Those are just our pets. That was an accident.
Yeah,
was it?
they got in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, did they? Wow.
And I'm not going to spoil anything, but I don't think they're as under control as the princes are leading people to believe.
Fair.
Fair.
It's too bad that Bryce can't just use the horn to open the portal to nowhere, but no one actually knows where or even what that is. The Star Sword and Truth Teller are pinpointed to the location of nowhere.
I don't know what that means. Honestly, there are a few things in this book, like the portal to nowhere, ultimate destruction, and then what happens with the parasite and the cure and whatever. I can roll with it and just keep reading and be like, okay, I can't think too much about it.
But like, what does that mean that they're pinpointed to the location? This isn't a compass. Like, what do you mean?
Location of nowhere. What do you mean?
But the two of them are like, it just, I don't know. It's so vague that I guess you can use your imagination, but I also need a little bit more instruction.
I don't think I have imagination.
I don't know. I guess they're basically, like the only way to get to nowhere.
To get to nowhere? Okay.
Which is somewhere, but it's not anywhere.
I understand it in terms of the plot, and it's like, I can be like, okay, this is what we need to do. But yeah, the logistics and reasoning, like my tiny little woman brain starts hurting.
No, it's because we like to overthink. So you can't give us that much room. We'll hang ourselves with that.
We definitely overthink.
Too much rope. So much could have gone wrong in this, like Bryce never getting the Star Sword from Rune, never going through a gate and landing in Prythian, never stealing Truth Teller from Az. How could Helena have possibly predicted all of that?
Think about all the things that had to happen for them to get to this point. She, like we didn't know she was going to take Truth Teller. We didn't know all these other things were going to happen, especially however many, 15,000 years ago they didn't know. So it was like a pretty big gamble.
Yeah, you're really hoping that she makes it back to the Fae homeworld. Like, or I guess that wasn't even the Fae homeworld necessarily, but you're really hoping she makes it back to Prythian.
Mm-hmm.
You've given her no guidance to do so. Like,
Well, and Helena did want Adis to nudge Bryce along, but because of her hatred for the Fae, he's like, you never would have trusted me or them if I pushed you to go back to Prythian. And Bryce just kind of agrees with it, but I'm also like, what does her distrust of the Fae have to do with her not believing you?
yeah.
I don't know. I think that he could have tried to,
Yeah. That sounds like he just kind of gave up too, which is very unclear.
like, I understand in like classic, like epic stories, like, you know, Beowulf type stories, they always have to have this like hero's journey, and Bryce needed that. It just seems like they put a lot was riding on her to do all of these different things.
Well, especially since she was trying to go to hell. They got very lucky, I guess. Or did they
Mm,
always know that? I mean, thank goodness she had the Star Sword on her,
yeah.
or else she never would have gone to Truth Teller. So
But yeah, exactly. She could have
that's
gone
just,
anywhere.
you can't make any assumptions. That's a lot of risk for something so important.
And the princes did agree. They agreed with it being a big risk. They weren't totally sold on Helena's plan, which is understandable given all the variables. So they had something that Rhys should have bought Feyre, Plan B.
If this chosen one was unable to access Thea's power, they needed a way to still fuel them up. Enter Hunt.
Who they say is the son of Apollion and Thanatos, but only in the vaguest sense.
Yeah,
That's another one that I'm like, wait, what?
it felt like you're a test tube baby again.
He is. He's definitely a
Because
test
they're
tube baby.
combining all kinds of things.
He is, but then he has a father. That's what okay, we're not there yet. But that confuses me too.
Yeah, it's a lot. Thanatos, who we know loves his little experiments, helped breed new types of demons like the Crystallos, the Shepherd, and Death Stalkers during the First Wars.
Apollion and Thanatos wanted to make a weapon for whenever this chosen one that Helena was betting would save the world came along, and Hunt is not their first experiment.
They actually started with the Thunderbirds. They'd hoped they'd spread and multiply, which they did until the Asteri hunted them to extinction.
So they kind of like yes and their way to an angel with the gifts of a Thunderbird, and they let the Asteri believe that they had created this perfect soldier, Hunt Athalar.
Fools.
Fools.
But their perfect soldier rebelled, Apollion says with a hint of pride.
I kind of want this like proud dad moment for Hunt. I know he's spiraling, but
It's a lot to take in.
it explains a lot too. The Thunderbirds were created to complement Bryce's power in case she ever got the sword and knife and needed a boost to open the rift, but then they were hunted down, so they made Hunt. So it makes sense, but
Like, it's important that putting all this together and trying to cover their bases, but I'm like, if she needs to have the sword and knife, what are you guys doing to make sure she gets the knife?
Mhm.
It's in a different world. Like, what's the
Right.
plan? So their goal all along was to open the Northern Rift and have an all-access pass to Midgard.
It does explain why Hunt was so good at hunting demons. It's in his blood, aka his hellfire, which is his lightning.
Which also is kind of sad because if he's technically part demon, he's really good at killing his own.
I know.
Hellfire is capable of killing almost anything, including an Asteri, which is how Apollyon killed Sirius.
And Hunt's name, Orion, was like a little inside joke because Orion is the master of Sirius in mythology and the stars.
So can they just go kill the Asteri using Hunt's lightning then?
That's what I thought, and it would I guess make too much sense. It's too easy.
Cuts out too much of the timeline.
Well, Hunt's mother's angelic blood watered down the hellfire. So I guess it would be Apollyon has the power to do that, but Hunt only has like a fraction of his power.
Well, fortunately, there's another one there. Speaking of his mother, we finally learn who Hunt's father is, biologically, just not in the vague sense via the princes.
This is the one that it confuses me. It all confuses me. There was a scientist angel named Hyreus?
Sounds good.
Working at the Asteri archives, who was researching the origins of Thunderbirds as part of a project named after a near-forgotten god of storms. Thur, finally. Project Thur, which we first heard about via Sophie and Danica's emails in Sky and Breath. And it's something we definitely thought hinted to Hunt being descended from, or maybe even a reincarnation of Thur.
I mean, he had all the signs. It made sense.
They put so many little Easter eggs in there.
There was so much comparison between the two of them, and especially with those statues at the ballet.
Right, exactly. And By the way, Hyrieus is where Orion was born in Greek mythology. I thought that was interesting how she
Ooh.
connects all these names. He was visited by Zeus and I almost said Hermes. He was visited by Zeus and Hermes, who, to express gratitude for his hospitality, promised to fulfill a wish of his, which was children. The gods filled a sacrificial bull's hide with their urine, gross,
What?
then told Hyrieus to bury it, and 9 months later, he found a newborn baby boy inside and named him Orion. Some of the myths are so fucking wild.
Not that I want to know more, but like, why was it not filled with like your seed or something that makes sense to breed a child?
No, it definitely said urine. Because I started just like looking up the name and I found it and I was like, oh, he's connected to Orion. Then I read it and I was like, ugh.
Ugh. Okay, don't ever tell me that again.
Okay, sorry.
Not you. If I was him, I'd be like, is that really my parents?
Thanks.
Okay. The princes of hell told this scientist the truth and he offered to help. So they had the male they needed and they just needed a female for him to breed with.
But to breed with, but the princes are the fathers. What did they need? That doesn't make sense to me. Hunt's bio dad knew his mother, who was a pavo, poor person. And it seems like he was a genuinely good guy, like he had planned on sticking around. But the mystics told Rigulus about his connections to hell and they tortured and executed him.
Oh.
So I guess I'm confused why Apollion and Thanatos couldn't just run a train on Hunt's mother.
Wow.
Like, why did they need a male to breed with his mother if they're the fathers?
Well, they can't come to Midgard unless somebody summons them into a circle, but they can still sort of be there.
And so how did they get their power inside of this baby? What?
Or how did they get it to this man to create I don't know.
Right. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Thanatos' experiments.
I guess it's its experiment. But it's still just not it's not explained very well. Because they just keep saying in the vaguest sense. And I'm like,
I need to know. Was there P in the V?
Yeah.
What did we do? Was there an injection?
Right.
It is interesting, but I need more.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's kind of sad because Hyrieus didn't break. He didn't tell the Asteri about Hunt's mother or her pregnancy.
And Hunt
he protected them in the end.
Right. He seems like he would have been a good dad. So that makes me sad. Because
he always wondered if his mom had been hurt.
Yeah.
To get pregnant. So,
well, and when we first learned about Hunt, coming in some way from the princes, you're like, oh no, did they do something bad to his mother? Was she in on it? And I can't wait. Was she in on it? Does she know that the princes of hell are involved?
I don't know. I mean, because they make it sound like they chose her.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it wasn't somebody he was already dating, then I don't know.
Yeah.
More questions.
But Hunt has the same question I did when I was reading this. I was like, oh shit, their mate bond.
That is not what they need right now.
Engineered, like it's not real. Because if he's made for Bryce, who's to say that they didn't fuck with that too?
Oh, it's a Rowan situation.
Exactly.
The princes say no, they didn't mess with the mate bond. It was never intended to be at all. So it comes from a higher power, whatever or whomever that is.
Hunt has already given so much, like he's already sacrificed and suffered, and now he learns that he's a battery pack for Bryce. And it just seems kind of, I don't know.
It's kind of I mean, yeah, like
I thought
it's not about you as a person anymore. It's about like what you can do for somebody else. So I'm glad it worked out for them to be more.
Mm-hmm.
As he struggles with everything that he's learned, Bryce calls the princes out. Helena wanted me to finally end this with the Asteri, but it sounds like y'all just wanted to open the door to Midgard or what?
Well, and Bryce could use a little more time to process and prepare and strategize, but the way the princes have orchestrated this, she doesn't have the time. And I wonder if that was maybe the real reason why they kept so many things secret. Like, are they trying to force Bryce's hand in opening the rift?
Yeah. There's so many questions we have, like we were just talking about when they were creating Hunt. How did you do that if you weren't supposed to be able to come through the barrier? And it feels like they have more power than they've let on, and there's more they could have done. Mm-hmm. Adis is like, bitch, I told you to find me when you wanted the truth.
But they did ask Adis. They asked him a lot of things, and I know Hunt asked him about the Black Crown several times, and he was just shitty about it.
Well, it was one of those, he's giving him riddles or vague answers again. Thanks, that was helpful.
He did talk in riddles a lot, especially with the Oracle and everything, and yeah, it just seems like they left a lot up to chance.
Yeah. Hunt asks how Hell was able to kick the Asteri out the first time, and Thanatos answers they had trouble feeding off their magic and the prince's power rivaled the Asteri's.
So they fled before the princess could kill them, allegedly. Like, I don't trust the Asteri, but I don't totally trust the princes either. So it's
No.
kind of like just picking the best of the worst.
Well, yeah, like none of us were there, so we just have to assume you're telling the truth. Apollion killed Sirius with his hellfire, pulling her burning heart from her chest and eating it.
Which is where the whole Apollion ate Sirius blind item came from. It explains it, even though we were hoping that Sirius was like living in hell.
Not as sexual as we were expecting.
Not sexual. When Hunt asks how it's possible, Apollion says he's darkness itself, true darkness, the kind that exists in a black hole.
Remember that black hole line?
Also, all of this darkness talk makes me think of a certain High Lord. Could the others like Hunt that Apollion references in the dungeons be someone or someone's in Prythian? Because remember, Apollion says something about, he references Hunt in a way that it makes you think there's more than one.
He wasn't the first, whatever it is.
Yeah, and Sarah uses the phrase stars winking out in regards to Rhys several times, which to me sounds like a black hole.
Yeah.
And when Bryce was in Prythian and they were manipulating her to go down into that cave, Rhys trapped her in the room with a wall of darkness that even her light couldn't penetrate. And there's also Rhys's beast form and Apollion's true form that are a little similar.
Yeah, there's a lot of, these are valid questions that I hope we get some answers on. I hope it's not just forgotten. I know the Asteri created the Illyrians as angel prototypes, but it's still an interesting detail that the princes, or at least Apollyon, has leathery wings.
Could Rhys's beast actually be a dragon? And when it's revealed that the princes of hell are the true villains, that's how he's able to fight them? Because we've been reminded so many times that dragons are, one of the only few things that can harm a prince of hell is a dragon's fire. Why does that keep coming up if that's not going to be a plot point?
I was going to say those beasts that are under the what is it called?
Hewn City.
Yeah, thank you. The Hewn City in Prythian. Are those some form of dragon? Can those help defeat the princes of hell?
Right, because it definitely wasn't Ariadne. She's had nothing to do with the plot. So, like, why?
She kind of disappeared on us.
Yeah, she really did. And think of the first time that Feyre sees Rhys's beast form. She says the talons came first, replacing fingers and feet, then dark scales or perhaps feathers. I couldn't get a good look at him. Covered his arms, his legs, his chest. His body contorted, bones and muscles growing and shifting. The beast form Rhys had kept hidden, never liked to unleash.
And that's definitely not what Illyrians look like, so that is something else. It was, quote, a thing of nightmares, nothing human or fey in it. It was a creature that lived in black pits and only emerged at night to hunt and feast. The face, it was those creatures that had been carved into the rock of Court of Nightmares. Hello.
Hello.
They made up his throne. The throne, not only a representation of his power, but of what lurked within and with the wings.
We haven't actually seen Ariadne's dragon form because she is stuck in her humanoid form right now. But it does sound like a dragon or even one of those Daglin hounds from the Wild Hunt.
Ooh, is Rhys like a word hound?
Imagine. We learned in Silver Flames that the Daglin's hounds look like the beast in the Hewn City, according to Nesta. And Feyre compares Rhys to the beast in the Hewn City. So you're like, does that mean...
How did Nesta know?
Lanthus showed her a vision of the hounds and a vision of them fucking.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
And I don't know what any of this means and if it's just another case of us overthinking. But I... like, imagine that Rhys was bred part dragon because he is part Illyrian and they were bred by the Asteri. What if they bred a little dragon in there so they would have an army that they could use against the princes of hell?
Yeah. There is no telling what the Asteri were trying to get started before they left.
Right. Like, I don't think that Thanatos was the only one having little experiments.
Well, we've seen that the Asteri have plenty of patience and will play the long game. So there's no telling what they were trying to get started.
Exactly.
But back to the princes, Bryce asks why Apollion can't just, eat the rest of the Asteri like he did Sirius, but it takes proximity and there's no way they let the princes out of the pit to get that close again.
For all your talk about armies, this place looks pretty fucking dead. Bryce is like looking around, but Apollion assures her that their lands and armies are elsewhere.
Why are they hidden? What else are you hiding?
And if you're wondering if all 7 of the princes are going to be helping in this fight, 4 of the princes are currently engaged in other conflicts, helping other worlds.
You guys are rather helping other worlds, huh?
They're just so helpful just because they're good people.
Sure, Jan. Do they happen to be named Orcus and Mantix?
She's like, so y'all are just intergalactic saviors. You're just doing the right thing.
Who knew? Adis and Apollion try to hide their smiles at that.
It says that, and that's suspicious.
It's very
They're
suspicious.
like smirking like, this dumb bitch.
Yeah, that's us.
There's another concern that Bryce has, and it's what we talked about earlier, that demons are unreliable and unpredictable. They're demons.
Yeah.
And Adis kind of addresses that and says that the ones that participated in the attack in the spring were punished and will follow orders, which again, we'll see later on that that's not exactly the case.
Who's to say that they weren't following orders back then either?
Exactly. They're like, oh, they're going to follow orders this time.
We're just supposed to take your word for it.
Are we sure that you didn't? It just seems like the princes may have been behind a lot of things or letting a lot of things happen to push Bryce towards this moment of opening the rift.
There's just too many people that have come up that they don't know if they can trust. And then later it's proven they can't trust them. So it's another one of those, you're like, okay, right. I guess, I have to go with whatever you say.
Bryce is like, I'll think about it. And Thanatos he calls her girl. He's like, this isn't a game, girl. And that's when she's over it because she was called girl one too many times by Amryn.
Not happening anymore, guys. They're running out of time, but before they lose the connection, Apollion tells Hunt no true son of hell can be caged.
Then just tell me how. That would drive me insane. Like they keep doing it's like a little dig of like, no son of mine.
I don't have time to sit around and just like poke around what magic I may have to see what's going to happen.
And I think that there is a part of Hunt that like doesn't want to tap into that because he's like, oh man, I'm part like hell.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
I've been fighting that all this time.
Right.
And Adis tells Bryce that if she finds that final piece of Thea's power, the cost of uniting the sword and knife is too much, then don't do it. Choose life.
And that's another line to remember, him saying choose life, because we know how Bryce doesn't like to follow direction.
Well, she's a martyr, so it won't be her life she's choosing. Bryce wakes to Therion, Baxian, Sathia, Flint, and Dex surrounded by fire controlled by the Autumn King, who along with Morven and the Murder Twins has caught up to everybody. And
they didn't just get there. Hunt is covered in burns from the Autumn King trying to wake him.
Dick.
I know it reminds me of what he did to Rune, but I kept having the thought of why didn't the Autumn King and Morven just kill them while they were in hell?
But also,
I mean, they don't know they were in hell. They just know they were doing something.
Yeah, Hunt has the burns, but he still seems to have kind of left Bryce alone.
I guess.
I don't know. There's something he still wants from her, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's just I was like, just kill them. Like they were lying prone on the ground.
He also, the Autumn King is nothing if he's not curious. So I'm sure he wants to know what they were doing with the Black Salt.
I do. I guess that he saw them and was like, where are they? Who are they talking to? What's going on?
Wake up and tell me.
Bryce draws the Star Sword and Truth Teller, rubbing it in that they don't work for reject losers. Sometimes
burn.
I'm like, grow up, Bryce. But she's like, it doesn't work for losers, and that's probably why the Autumn King killed the last Starborn prince.
Gasp. Her father LOLs, but Morven gives major side eye.
Yeah, because that's something he had not heard, so he's like, what?
You should be checking into this. The Autumn King finally admits that he did kill the last Starborn prince, not out of jealousy, but because he wanted to put an end to the bloodline, just like Bryce.
At least they don't plan on killing everyone. I mean, some of the Fae they can use for breeding. So sorry, Baxian and Therion. But the rest of them, they're like, oh, we can use them.
What a real relief.
One spark from Bryce and the Autumn King will burn her friends, still surrounded by his flames. And it's not just the flames that pose a threat.
The Murder Twins attack Sathia, the only one who didn't get the automatically good at mental shields gene.
She's like, when did you guys practice shields?
Are we supposed to do this together? And she snatches her husband's knife and holds it against her own throat.
But didn't we just establish they wouldn't kill Sathia because of the breeding? They're like, okay, we'll keep the Fae alive for breeding purposes, and then their threat is that she'll slit her own throat. But it's like, y'all just said.
Right. Well, they need her, and she's like, okay, well, I'll take myself out if you don't back up.
Well, he's controlling her.
Oh.
The Murder Twins are controlling her, and it's like, I don't know.
Regardless, this is how they're going to get to Bryce then.
Bryce drops the blades as she's instructed, and they skitter to a stop atop an 8-pointed star. So
There's
they're
that
being
star
drawn
again.
in like a magnet.
The murder twins allow Sathia to lower the knife, and the Autumn King and Bryce go back and forth, just like she did with Micah when she was stalling for time.
Bryce extends her hand, and the Star Sword and Truth Teller fly to her, just like they did in Prythian, because like calls to like or whatever. I hate
Whatever.
that. I'm so tired of hearing that.
But there's more likes than just her in that room. It's like, okay.
Like calls to like, calls to like, calls to like.
They could go to other people too. Okay. Bryce had been stalling for time, but not for herself. Hunt's lightning, which had been gathering in a wave, launches for the murder twins who have to let go of their hold of Sathia.
And that's when Bryce erupts with starlight as the entire cave shakes as lightning and shadow collide.
Also, like in Prythian.
When Az was being a little weirdo and following them in the shadows.
Yeah.
It's like, Az, come out. We know you're here. The murder twins say, let's go, ghouls, and sick them on Bryce. But Hunt uses his lightning to turn them to dust. I know Apollion said Hunt's his power is watered down, like he doesn't have as much hellfire. But he did say that it could kill almost anything, but he can't even get through the murder twins' wall of shadow. So I'm like, is he that powerful? Is he not?
Is it because he's allowing this crown to still be on his head, blocking something?
I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, it does bring up some questions. It at least keeps them from joining the fight, though, which is Hunt's priority since, as he tells Baxian, Bryce doesn't need his help against the two Fae Kings.
I appreciate that. That is like, Rhys letting Feyre take the lead on some things.
Yeah, let me fight my own battle.
Fire meets starlight meets shadows as Bryce throws herself at her father and Morven, not because of the Asteri or even Midgard or anything, but because leaders like them, what they've done to the Fae, that the Fae could be so much more if it weren't for these assholes.
Finally, she gets to the root of her anger, though. Like,
exactly.
Don't take it out on all the Fae. Get the people that have started this, acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new realization for Bryce, one her trip to Prythian and time with Az and Nessa helped her to finally come to. The Fae of Midgard are capable of so much more.
And I think that's why it was so important. Why, when she went to Prythian, Az and Nesta were kind of like the perfect choices for her. Like, I can't imagine it going the way it did if it had been some of the other characters.
But also Az, who should automatically have been accepted based on what she knows. And she sees all those burn marks and the scarring. It's like, okay, like others have made it through and they don't have to be like that.
Right.
She's like, I don't even need that final piece of Thea's magic. I'm already enough to take on these assholes, starting with the murder twins who she floods with starfire.
Their bodies fall to the ground with steaming holes where their eyes have been because she literally melted their brains, which reminded me
awesome.
on Supernatural, when they look at like angels' true forms, their eyes burn out. It just reminded me of that.
Gross.
But if you've ever looked at what angels actually look like in the Bible, it's fucking terrifying because they're not chunky little cute babies with wings.
Mm-hmm.
They are covered in eyes and they have like 6 wings. I mean, I'm talking covered in eyes.
Really?
Yeah. It's not sexy.
Well, I guess I could see that, but the eyes. I don't think I understand the eyes, but okay.
Well, the fan art, not fan art. Is it fan art of the Bible if it's
I don't
paintings?
I mean, because
it's never accurate.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's kind of insane.
Mm-hmm.
Morven sends a whip of shadow hidden beneath the Autumn King's flame to wrap around Bryce's legs and yank her to the ground.
Bryce teleports to the Autumn King and grabs his fist, sending starfire blasting into him until he follows the trend his son started in the dungeon, and he ends up with only one hand.
What a trend. Morven sends shadow birds, and the Autumn King sends flame after Bryce until she's on the ground with her father, standing over her. He's got a sword of flame in his undamaged hand.
And as he is bringing the sword down on his daughter, which I'm surprised by because I didn't think there was going to be a total redemption arc, but I thought he at least had
It seemed like he cared at least a little bit.
Right. But as he's bringing it down, light bursts from his chest.
But it's not Hunt's hellfire or Bryce's starfire.
It's Rune, who has driven the star sword right through his father's heart and says into his mind, I lied about what the oracle said to me. Like, he's just going in for it.
Get it, Rune. This is his chance. Mm-hmm. I'm glad he gets to have it. Not only is the Autumn King shocked that his son just stabbed him through the heart, not only is he shocked the oracle said the royal bloodline would end with Rune, but he's saying it into the Autumn King's mind.
And he never had any idea that his son had mind speak or Daemati or whatever. So this is his first, he's learning a lot in that moment. And he's if he had the time to process all of this, he would probably be so jelly just about everything. He's like, man, you have the Star Sword and your Daemati.
Not fair.
It's not fair.
But then Rune cuts his head off. So, sigh. Sorry.
Well.
Rune finally understands what we've been saying since book 1. The royal bloodline ending with him didn't mean he'd die. It meant the end of the male lines, the starborn fucks, the entire system of crowns and inheritance.
It's basically death to the patriarchy. That's how I read it.
Yeah, same. The line ends with Rune, who yields the crown and title to the motherfucking queen.
In this moment, I was like, maybe they should try out democracy, but I guess all hail this 23-year-old queen with no experience. Like, good for her.
I mean, girl boss, apparently.
She really girl bossed too close to the sun.
She got right in there. Assistant to the queen is a pretty big leap.
She really was. She was an assistant and now she's queen.
Yeah. I mean, bright news. Good news, the Autumn King is dead. Bad news, the fire is still surrounding Baxian, Therion, Sathia, Deck, and Flynn.
Lydia rushes over like she might be able to do something to help.
Where has she been?
She was just kind of standing there. But she, like the way that Hunt was just kind of like backing Bryce up, I feel like Lydia was just kind of backing Rune up.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of this fight isn't directly related to her. She'll jump in if they need her.
But she jumps into this. Like, no one's really paying attention. It's too much chaos.
But they do need her. So as soon as the fire vanishes. Know why.
They're like, she rushes over, the fire vanishes, and then Bryce assumes that it was Morven controlling the fire, which doesn't actually make any sense. But
because he has no fire magic,
right? He doesn't have fire magic, but he's kind of like slow blinking. Like he's also like, what happened to the fire?
Yeah, what happened to the king? What's just happened?
It's a lot to take in.
Morven may have yielded, but there's no hope for uniting not just the Fae, but all of Midgard with assholes like him around.
So Bryce becomes queen of the Valbaran and Avallen Fae when she stabs Truth Teller through Morven's heart. But when Sathia bows to her as queen of the Midgardian Fae, Bryce is like, let's start with just Avallen and Valbara.
So, like, who are the other Fae?
That was my
like,
question.
Other than, I'm sure there's more to this world, but
well, are there Fae in Pangera, like a Pangeran Fae king, or is that just where like humans and the Asteri?
It would stand to reason that there should be.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out.
Because she was like, let's start with this. So clearly there are other Fae.
Yeah. Flynn, Deck, and Rune kneel alongside Sathia, and Rune offers the Star Sword on behalf of the Starborn princes before him.
I love Rune. I mean, not even for a second was he like, oh, I can be king right now.
Yeah.
He immediately gave everything over. And I think we had our problems with Rune, but he still is one of my favorite.
Yeah, they were never related to him not supporting his sister, even if he was
a
little bit rude at one point.
He is a very supportive brother. Bryce and Hunt share what they learned in Hell. They share some of what they learned. Bryce has 2/3 of Thea's magic, and if they find the final piece, she can use the sword and knife to open the portal to nowhere and trap the Asteri.
They leave out the whole Hunt's paternity of it all.
Like, he's still coming to terms with this, so he's definitely not ready to be asked questions.
There's bigger things.
When they hear Helena use Midgard's ley lines to hide the power in the caves, Rune and Lydia remember what they saw back in the archives on a map, how entire islands had seemingly disappeared.
Hiding Thea's magic on Avallen drained the land's magic from its ley lines, just as Selene's lands withered around the prison while it held her share of Thea's power.
I can't tell if this was a typo. It says, or Bryce says, Selene had the horn, but Helena had to use the ley lines. But Selene didn't have the horn. Like, do you think she means the harp? Am I reading this incorrectly? I totally could be, but I was like, Selene, the horn was back in Midgard
with Helena.
Yeah. She had the harp. So
I don't know. I
don't know.
That could be a typo.
DM me, Sarah.
They need to explain it if it's not. So, okay, the magic is in the land, but how do they get it out?
Just like Prythian, the answer is written in stone. Literally, the river of starlight that Helena carved was a hint. This is another example of like, Bryce picks up on things. Really, I don't know if I would have seen the starlight carved and put this together. Like, good for her that she's what is it? Observing? What is that?
Yeah. Observant. Perceptive.
I guess I'm just not, because I don't know. Bryce looks at the 8-pointed star in the center of the room at the 2 slits in the points. one larger and one smaller, just like the weapons that she's holding.
The Star Sword and Truth Teller are keys to unlock the power. The last part of Thea's magic Bryce needs to take on the Asteri. Bryce says she's ready.
And Hunt's like, ready for what? Because all this is happening in Bryce's head, her putting all of this together. So everyone just sees her standing there and she's like, I'm ready. What do you mean you're ready?
We have a lot going on. What?
But she ignores him and plunges the Star Sword and Truth Teller into the 8-pointed star.
Light blasts through the blades into Bryce, and the land, no longer burdened with hiding Thea's power, comes back to life. The caves begin to crumble, burying the corpses of Peleus and the Autumn King and Morven and their hateful legacies.
It's a great visual and it's like a great symbol, but I do wonder how it caved in on everyone but them.
Well, she was able to control the rock in the caves in Prythian.
Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe she was able to help get them out.
So sunlight breaks through and grass and flowers are blooming at their feet. Sathia and Flynn are like shooting trees and berries out of their asses. The islands from the maps rise out of the water.
Bryce, freeing the magic, taking that final piece of Thea's power, has brought Avallen back to life. Bryce and Rune are sobbing, but it's not all joy and hope. There's grief for the years of pain caused by their father, who's now buried beneath the rubble.
And there's the whole journey ahead, one they might not live through, but here on Avallen is proof of what Midgard could be if they do succeed.
Meanwhile, the people that are living on Avallen are completely terrified.
Well, I mean, they just saw the castle be destroyed. Flynn is like cumming trees everywhere. Their king is dead. A girl that they've never met who's in her 20s is like, I'm your daddy now.
They also, I mean, I don't even know if these people get to ever leave the island. So they have like no electricity, no technology. Right. This is about to be a whole new world.
Like imagine a girl in her 20s comes up and is like, I'm your ruler now. Be like, who are you?
Yeah, are you though? There's so much that's happened. It's almost easy to forget that Hunt just found out he's a demonic test tube baby.
And he had no time to process it because their trip to hell went right into the fight with the kings.
Bryce assures Hunt where he comes from isn't who he became and who he is. But you don't seem to like the person I became either, he points out to Bryce, because on top of not having time to process their trip to hell, there's also that big fight they had and haven't resolved.
Right. Like she's like, well, he's saying, yeah, that's not who I am, but you don't seem to even like who I am.
Yeah, you got a lot of complaints.
And she says she can't do it without him, without all of him. And he says he's trying. And I mean, he is. He did just literally go to hell with you. When has Hunt not been there when you needed him?
I mean, it's not like he's not going to try. It's a lot to process, and there's no support from his mate. So, like, I'm not saying I can't adjust my thinking on this, but like, I don't want to do it just because you told me to. I need to like process it to come do it on my own terms.
Part of the decisions, like before you slam the Star Sword and Truth Teller and I ask what's going on, like just tell me before you do it, you know?
Yeah, especially if something bad had happened to you and I'm your mate standing here helpless. Like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm. They have the same combo they've had a million times. It's basically risk reward. Hunt is terrified of losing his mate, but he knows how important it is what they're doing. So he's trying to put the fear behind him. He's like doing his best. But there's still just like a lot of trauma.
It's a lot. I wouldn't say that things are now resolved, but they do both agree to do their best. Hunt is not letting his fear control him, and Bryce is trying to listen and not be such a bitch.
Respectfully.
So
Bryce has this last piece of Thea's power, but now what? How do they get close enough to the Asteri to use the Star Sword and Truth Teller to open the portal to nowhere? And they don't even really know how to do that.
Well, it's not something that you really want to practice in case it is something super dangerous, but like, how do you know it's going to work at a critical moment?
Well, and that's another thing is the princess talked about how Thea, because Bryce has a moment where she's like, well, if Thea had this option all along, why didn't she send them to Portal to Nowhere? And he's like, well, ultimate destruction. And that like gave Thea pause, but it doesn't really seem to like matter to Bryce.
There's also no explaining how to close the portal again.
Right.
So like,
well, it reminded me of the cauldron when it was kind of when it was broken or whatever, and so it was like leaking into reality.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a portal to nowhere, I wonder?
Or was that everywhere all at once?
Or was that the void?
There's so much. They make getting as many people as possible to Avallen, where they'll be safe from the Asteri, their new priority. The depth charger can help now that Bryce can wield the mists and let them through.
But girl, have you forgotten the last time you talked to the Ocean Queen, you called her a fucking coward?
Ooh.
She's like, yeah, okay, we can have the depth charger help. And I literally think the Ocean Queen was like, this is the last thing I'm doing for you.
Yeah, you're going to have to yeah, that's a lot to ask of somebody after being so rude.
Well, and it is the right thing to do, but it also, so the island is changing. There's islands fucking popping up. They have a new queen. Castle's gone. Their king is dead. And now they're like, by the way, we're bringing all the refugees here.
Yeah, it is a lot of upheaval all at once. And there's also the Therion of it all. He ignored direct orders from the Ocean Queen, the only one standing between him and the River Queen and the Viper Queen, and then he jumped ship.
Therion asked Lydia how she does it, how she lives with being at the mercy of the Ocean Queen, but she didn't have a choice until now.
If we survive the Asteri, I'm not going back, she says. If we survive, it's because our enemies are dead, so the Ocean Queen won't need my services anymore.
The age of unchecked rulers is over. Just ask the Autumn King and Morven, and that includes the Ocean Queen too.
Yeah, all of them.
Good news, Deck has service. Bad news, the Asteri made their move. So they're just now learning everything that's happening in Lunathian.
It's all happening so fast and so close together too.
Mm-hmm.
Pollux and Mordock led hits on every Ophion base.
And we, the readers, know that they unleashed brimstone missiles on Asphodel Meadows. Asphodel Meadows.
With the poor humans. So their celebration of finding the last piece of Thea's magic, of killing the Fae Kings, of bringing the island back to life is very short-lived.
Part 3, The Ascent, is perfectly named for the middle part of an SJM book because it's like the roller coaster going up. It is The Ascent, and we are fucking in for it on the other side.
Ethan and Hypaxia finally arrive at the island with the help of a shark shifter crew.
I think it's so fun, a shark shifter crew. I just think that's...
Are there more shifters? Like, tell me more.
I know.
What else can you shift into?
We
like
know about the wolves, and we know about lions and sharks. I mean, and there's like birds, some kind of hawks or something.
Is the sky the limit? Can we have any kind of shifter?
I know.
Or is it only like predators?
Sloths.
I was like, what about like an octopus? That's very like Little Mermaid though.
Yeah.
Ursula.
I don't know. I'd like to hear more about the shifters.
Yeah.
Ethan and Hypaxia have no idea what has happened for like 90% of the book. Like they think Ethan and Hypaxia are at Avallen to grab Sophie's body because they're still on this stupid side quest to bring Siggy back again. Like hopefully this time not as a Reaper, but they don't even know that any of these people are on the island.
I can't believe this quest is still going. Just as they're wondering how they're going to get through the mist, they open and reveal an Avallen that is nothing like the one Hypaxia remembers.
And Bryce is devastated after hearing the news of what happened in Asphodel Meadows. Why is that happening? Bryce is devastated after hearing news of what happened in Asphodel Meadows and to Ophion.
And she finally understands Hunt and what he's been going through.
She just now gets it, yeah.
I mean, but she does apologize. She's sorry. She told him to get over it.
And it's not Bryce's fault what happened. It's the Asteris. They're at war. There are going to be casualties. And obviously, I'm not happy that this happened, but it is Bryce getting a little dose of what Hunt has been dealing with for hundreds of years, like feeling that guilt.
Well, I mean, any kind of rebellion, like you morally, ethically might know that it's necessary, but until you're in the middle of it, I don't think you can really understand, like what can happen to others, like the death that it may bring and the casualties that you'll experience. So now she's like, I guess it's registering.
Yeah, she's just now getting it.
It's nice to see her have some empathy though. Mm-hmm. Telling someone it isn't their fault is a lot easier than accepting it as the person who feels responsible. Mm-hmm. Once they've had service on the island, everyone starts calling friends and family. So Fury, Juniper, Ember, Randall, Emil, aka Cooper, and Syrinx are all in a helicopter on the way to Avallen.
Hunt wasn't sure whether or not he should call Isaiah and Naomi, but he opted not to, just in case their phones were tapped. So Hunt doesn't really have anybody to call.
Baby.
I know. We could stay here, Bryce tells Hunt during a rare moment alone, and it's a rare moment of vulnerability. She's like, we could just go get all of our family and friends and stay here on Avallen forever.
Okay, if you weren't okay with only saving part of the world and leaving the others to die by the Asteri, you can't stay on the island. I understand why she would want to, but like...
Yeah, I don't think this was she's not actually saying this is an option, but it's kind of like, we could just stay here.
I know. I'm sure when you have all that pressure on you, it's a nice thought. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish I could just do this.
But-
I mean, again, yeah, she really doesn't mean it. She's willed the mist to allow refugees in, and they can't hide there forever, no matter how tempting it really is.
Well, and it's tempting, and Bryce is like, did Erd want to tempt me? And that's what this whole thing was about. I'm not here to learn some magical defense against the Asteri, like the mist, because that was remember they originally thought they were going to like figure out how the mists work and use that. But now we know that it's actually the black salt that repels the Asteri.
Mm-hmm.
So she's kind of questioning if this was like a cruel joke on Erd's part.
I mean, in some ways, though, she has released Avallen from the oppression, and she's done a lot for the Fae very quickly, but yeah, she's starting to wonder the bigger picture. Hunt disagrees with her, saying it was a gift from Erd. She's able to see this go into final fight with the Asteri, knowing that her loved ones are safe and knowing that they'll be protected no matter if they win or lose.
And Hunt watches as flowers open for Bryce, and it's just like that night that he was attacked by the Crystallis demon. Remember when she like froze all the way back in House of Earth and Blood? And it's like, I guess back then we were already getting hints to Bryce and her connection. And we might have talked about that, but it just kind of like ties it all together.
Well, now she has more magic, so I bet the connection is even stronger. Avallen is what the prison in Prythian once was when Thea ruled before Selene fucked it up.
I do wonder what's going on now at the prison, because Vesperus is dead. Bryce took Thea's power, and it's great in theory. Like, it's great for Avallen to be back to life. I don't know if it's as great for the prison, because there are prisoners.
Yeah. Are they still restrained?
I'm very curious, because imagine if the next ACOTAR book is they have to hunt down all of these Daglin's pets that Selene had rounded up. Like, they have to go find them. Like, I guess
well,
Elaine
maybe that is the premise of the next book.
Yeah. Like, maybe Az and Elaine have to team up for it because she's a seer, and I don't know. Maybe that's how there's some forced proximity. Maybe not.
Or maybe Gwen's maybe Gwen's on the trip too as a Valkyrie to help like actually bring down the prisoners.
Yeah, I guess that would be, I don't know, the three of them I'd watch.
I mean, maybe Lucian needs to come so he can be useful.
Little Lucian.
We'll have a group trip. It'll be fun.
Maybe
so much fun.
What does he call his little, what is it, the band of, his little group of rebels? Band of rebels? That doesn't sound right.
What's the Band of Bastards?
Band of Bastards. That's it.
No, wait, is that from Black Dagger Brotherhood?
No, there is something of bastards, but no, I think he does call it the Band of Bastards or something.
Okay, well,
something that they make fun of.
Their little group.
Yeah.
So,
but we don't know how it has affected anything in Prythian, because those, the islands are seemingly tied together.
Well, assuming it's like Avallen and all these lost islands pop back up, I think Prythian's about to be shell-shocked. Like, where did those come from? What is going on?
Right. It's going to be a big part of the book.
I mean, it's kind of happening here in Avallen now. We now have all these islands back, so we don't know how Avallen's going to be affected now, but they're all connected as thin places. So
it's definitely going to be a big part of the next book. I just don't know if we're going to skip ahead, if there's going to be a time jump, or are we going to pick up right after Bryce leaves, or are we going to back up to where we find out what was going on while everyone was in the caves? I don't know.
I do kind of hope they go back. We've talked about this before. I hope they go back and discuss like everybody else's perspective while Az and Nesta are down there. I want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I do want to know what Cassian was up to.
Hunt asks if it's possible that they could recruit Fae from Prythian to fight against the Asteri.
First of all, there's no fucking way that Rhys would allow that. And the last time you saw Nesta and Az, you stole Truth Teller, you opened the coffin of an ancient evil, and you put the entire world at risk. So imagine going back and being like, hey, guys.
Well, they've had their own wars and battles recently, so why would they need to come fight yours?
Yeah.
With no time to waste, Bryce and Hunt begin strategizing.
We're really killing it today.
Nailed it. But it all comes down to one truth. They're going to have to travel to Nina to open the Northern Rift to Hell.
They're also going to use the Asteri's secrecy against them, beginning with telling the world about Micah and Sandriel, telling the world that archangels can be killed.
We're so good today.
And because they're so concerned about public image, it'll distract them, at least for a little while. So I don't know. I feel like Bryce just wants everyone to see her kill Micah.
Yeah.
She's like, maybe we should put this on YouTube.
She can't just tell everybody about Micah and Sandriel because the Asteri could then spin it.
Yeah.
So she's going to have to show them using the footage from Griffin Antiquities.
Ethan and Hypaxia finally join the plot, arriving on Avallen shores where they're immediately greeted by Hunt and Bryce.
Ethan explains they're there to retrieve Sophie, the prologue Thunderbird's body, because, quote, I fucked up.
Ethan tells them everything from finding an alternate heir to the Fendir line, to freeing her from the astronomer, to her death, to her coming back as a Reaper.
Ethan is shocked that Flynn, Deck, and Therion didn't tell them about Siggy.
And it shows how tunnel visioned he is. Like, they were too busy breaking the dungeon daddies out. Then they were on the ship. Then they were getting married. And then they were getting kidnapped. And then they were killing their own father. Like, no one cares about your accidental beheading.
For an heir that was never heir.
Well, and Ethan hasn't even asked Hypaxia how she's doing after losing her crown. Like, he's just so
tunnel vision,
single-minded, and like a little inconsiderate.
But also, like, this is not part of the bigger picture right now. Like, it matters, but it doesn't. The Asteri in defeating them matter.
And Bryce is really the only one that kind of calls him out of that, being like, we have other things we're focusing on.
I mean, Ethan's plan might have worked like yesterday, but Morven's castle is mostly rubble. So even if Sophie's body had been intact, it's not now.
And that's Bryce giving Ethan a little dose of reality. Like, sure, an alternate Fendir heir would have been great, but we have bigger problems right now.
Ethan does his whole I killed her spiral, and Hunt tells Hypaxia about Rigel collecting some of his lightning for a similar purpose to theirs.
That's something that Bryce did not know.
There's been a lot going on, Bryce. I didn't have time to tell you, okay?
Hypaxia, he also felt guilty about it.
Yeah. I mean, he felt ashamed, but what was he going to do? Let them sacrifice Rune?
Yeah.
Hypaxia thinks it might work, especially after Rune and Lydia tell everyone about the cache of crystals they found in the archives.
Everyone is on board with the plan, if for no other reason than they feel sorry for Ethan. Like, it just seems to be like, just fucking give him whatever so he'll go away. But Bryce is still telling him, what's done is done. I need your help with something that actually matters, making an antidote for the Asteri's parasite.
The parasite they learned about during this fairy convo.
Yeah, Ethan and Hypaxia are like...
I forget how disjointed everybody is,
right?
Because there's so much going on. Hypaxia somehow came up with a synth antidote like really quickly, but no one has so much as detected this parasite in 15,000 years.
Yeah, for 15,000 years, no one even knew they were infected, but now Hypaxia is expected to go home, turn on her Bunsen burner, and just create an antidote.
Well, it's not like she's ruling the witches anymore. She's got time.
She does have time. Hypaxia, and she's going to try, because she is to science what Deck is to computers. Like, that's her whole personality, so I do have faith in her.
Yeah, I believe in you, Hypaxia.
If this were like reality and, it's cancer or something, and they're like, find a cure, and it's like, we've been working on it. Like, things like that take time.
Oh, that's so much. Given the state of Avallen, even before Bryce arrived, Ethan and Hypaxia will need to go back to the House of Flame and Shadow to research.
Well, Hypaxia will be researching. Ethan can guard her. Bryce, it's like when you give a kid a fake job so they'll leave you alone, and it's like, you're doing this, and so it's like, Ethan, you'll be guarding her.
Ethan, this is how I know you're not a leader yet. He's
right.
Like, what about Secret?
I know everyone's, what about her? There's an antidote for a parasite that they're all infected with, literally everyone on the planet, and they need to get rid of it so they have a chance in a fight against the Asteri. Or should they focus on this wolf that half of the group never even met, who chose to become a Reaper?
Yeah.
Like, those are our choices.
It was messed up the first time. Why are we going to waste time on it again? This was already a mistake.
She chose this. She chose to become a Reaper. Like,
yeah. I don't know why he has such a tunnel. His guilt must be eating him alive because he can't let it go. They do humor him, and Hunt begins filling crystals on the condition that they leave as soon as he's done and immediately start work on the antidote, putting Siggy on the back Bunsen burner.
If you somehow find the antidote and you can't reach us, get it to the Eternal City in the fleet of mech suits on Mount Hermon. You'll know if it's too late because we'll be, dead. That's basically what they're like. Either we'll be here or we'll be dead. So go work on this.
I mean, that should get his head in the game. Who knows?
It doesn't. It seems like someone with those Sunball skills would know when to get your head in the game. But
yeah, strategy should be a strong suit. What's happening? Ethan and Hypaxia are on their way back to Lunathian with a pocket full of lightning-infused crystals and the impossible task of making antidote to a parasite they learned existed 20 minutes ago.
And that's where we'll pick up next week with chapters 67 through 72. Thanks, y'all.
Bye, y'all.